Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome our first guest of the day, DJ, producer, and co-founder of Night Slugs, Bok Bok.
Hello, hi.
So I guess a kind of starting point for our conversation is something about clubs. To what extent are nightclubs the source for most of what you and Night Slugs do?
I would say it's like the main context. It's the place where our music's meant to live. So it's vital, actually. Yeah, it's like the main focus. And it's only really recently that a few of the producers in Night Slugs have started to think outside of that context, really. And there's various causes for that. I guess part of it is just growing up as an artist and stuff like that. But I'm really keen to try and keep as much of the music in that context as possible, because my whole thing is Night Slugs is about the club, and we're about trying to make that space much more dynamic and interesting and flexible and much more of an experience than it's actually like traditionally set up to be. This kind of idea of the club as just a hedonistic place is okay, but I think there could be so much more than that. Or it could be more than that while still being hedonistic and, you know, a fun place to go out and have a good time. But it's also, if you let it be something, if you let it be a place where you can have a genuine experience, then I think it can become that.
So if you're in the business of kind of redesigning the nightclub as to be able to do different things, for different things to be possible, like what else would be in there?
In the club?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes the possibilities are kind of limited, although I find that frustrating because a lot of the time I want clubs to be like just how I want them to be. I want them to be dark, I want them to be smoky. In fact, I want them to be pitch black, which hardly ever happens.
So the old exit light business.
Exit lights, the bar light, you know, like health and safety. But all that stuff is really frustrating to me because I just want everyone to be able to be in their own space and almost have this kind of almost like underwater experience, or this almost like kind of sensory deprivation feeling of being detached from normality and therefore being able to experience. I know Code 9 has talked about this as well, and he's like, the way he talks about it kind of influenced me as well, like, you know, clubs as being dark and that allowing you to have a really unique experience in them. But there's other stuff too, like when we did a warehouse rave in New York a few months ago, and it was like our own production, that we weren't working with anyone else, we promoted it ourselves, and me and L-Vis really made a point to try and design the space. So we worked with the Thunder Horse guys to you know, present the space in a certain way. So we had these plants on the stage and like a backdrop of kind of old grey TV screens that weren't switched on, that were just there for like a texture, I guess, and like a smoke machine that was going really overboard to the point where at one point, you know, the lights in this warehouse came on, and that was kind of like part of the thing, is that when the lights came on, you could still not see anything because there was so much smoke in the room. And that's kind of what we want, you know. But the opportunities where we do have the chance to control the club environment, we definitely try and like seize those, because it's rare, but it's becoming more common for us to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. It's definitely something I want to try and focus on.
Smoke's a funny thing. I remember when the smoking ban came into force in the UK. Yeah. And it was suddenly like someone was missing. It was like a person had left the room.
I mean, it's difficult for more reasons than one. Yeah. But it's definitely strange because, but you know, you can create smoke machines without smoking, without people having to smoke. So there's an easy way to get around that. I just wish people would relax about health and safety, and then we'll have a better time in the club.
But for you, I mean, the club as a thing is important in lots of different ways. It's important because that's how you started, and I guess it's important because it's a kind of ongoing test station. Yeah, because I don't want to do this thing where, which a lot of people's careers take this path where they start kind of here, and then they have this aspirational thing where they want to be somewhere else, and I think that's fine. But I want to always keep one foot in the club, at least one foot, if not both. We'll see how it pans out. But I mean, the important thing is I want to stay rooted to what it is I started doing, and I'm trying to be a DJ. That's what I want to be doing for God knows how long after this, you know. And when I make music, that's the context I'm thinking of, and it's this idea of the club with a capital C. It's definitely something that's vital to me, for sure. So when you first started doing parties, was it because there was like the classic reason to start a night because you want to do something slightly different and there's like a group of you and you want to do something and then it takes on a life of its own, or was there a kind of slightly different reason?
No, that was exactly it. It was me and L-Vis. We were bored with what the situations we were getting booked at for as up-and-coming DJs. We didn't feel that we really had a context in London that much because some of the stuff that was going on at the time was cool, but we just didn't fit. And that was definitely the motivation to start something new and try and cultivate it. And we really did that. Like we didn't have any idea of where it would lead at all. We just wanted to start a club night for fun, just like everyone else. I mean, how many of you guys run club nights? You know, it's like everyone does it, right? So it's like we really just started off from that, like just being these DIY promoters doing raves in South London in a venue that used to be a squat. You know, it wasn't, our sights weren't set high.
Mm-hmm. But there is a lineage there, isn't it? Because, you know, you had a club like Forward and then you had DMZ starting because they wanted to do something slightly different than Forward that was their thing with kind of more shades of colour in it. And then you kind of broadly coming from sort of through those experiences.
Totally.
Had
Do you
the
guys
same
know about
feeling.
Forward? Does everyone know about Forward? Forward was a club night in London. And I bring it up, well, it's a good thing you brought it up, but I want to explain it a little bit because it's totally vital, kind of influential to what we're doing now, I feel. Forward was in a club called Plastic People, which has changed a little bit now, but at the time was like this tiny box club in Shoreditch, and the size of the sound system and the way the sound system sounded and felt and the way that it was set up was just, was like way beyond the size of the room. But for some reason, it just worked amazingly. And that was like the ultimate feeling of what I'm describing, of that underwater club experience. Of you go there and the lights are off and you could completely have your own space. Because it was never that busy. Well, most nights it wasn't that busy. The music was, when I started going, predominantly this thing that was being called dark garage, 8-bar, which then soon became dubstep. But people would always go there and play different disciplines of the same thing. So it's like you could see 4 DJs on one Forward lineup, and they would each be bringing their own slant on this kind of sound that was bass heavy and a really physical experience because of this crazy sound system. People would go there and test tracks. You know, dub plates would get cut just so they can be played in this club. And so, yeah, it was kind of special. And it was definitely a community that I wasn't really even part of. I was just going to the nights because that was somewhere where I was getting a lot of inspiration from at the time. And I stayed going there. Definitely had some of my most influential club experiences in this tiny box room. So, yeah, Forward was like a template.
But by being there, you kind of were part of it because...
Yeah, you could say that. I became part of it slowly, but the difference is I wasn't running up to the DJs trying to give him tracks, or I wasn't running up to the DJs trying to befriend myself or anything like that. I just wanted to go there, listen, and smoke and leave. Basically, that was my.
But there's another interesting thing about that. Obviously, I think it influenced a lot of people, and a lot of people who were there kind of went off to do things. It sort of enabled a load of people to do things.
I think it was the foundation for so many, because people like myself and DJs like Ben UFO and DJs like One Man, we all started around the same kind of time. So this new wave of London people that came after the initial Forward, Rinse, kind of DMZ people, we felt like that we were definitely following in their footsteps to some extent. So it was definitely set a precedent. Mm.
But there's something about the kind of the infrastructure and also the message that just like you can do stuff, you can invent something.
For sure.
And that the kind of all the relevant bits were in place.
Yeah.
For you to be able to do that. That also had an impact, didn't it?
Definitely. But also, I don't know, I never felt like I couldn't do something or I couldn't try. So, I mean, as much as they helped, that also came from just the feeling that you can, why not?
So when you started your parties, how can you give us a sense about how it kind of goes from being people wanting to do a party because what you are doing and the thing that you're into doesn't quite fit the things that already exist, to it kind of becoming a thing where people are giving you tunes and you're thinking, oh, well, this is the next logical step. How did that come about?
To be honest, I'm not really sure how that came about. It's just so organic and natural where, the people that are coming out to the nights are friends of ours, and maybe they get inspired by something they hear or they get inspired by a certain blend, and then they go home and make something. or just the fact that they're like-minded and we've been talking for years and we've been sharing music and DJing together for years. You know, it's just a really, really natural thing that came about. I can't take credit for it. It's just a beautiful phenomenon that a bunch of people happen to start making the right kind of music at the right time. And me and L-Vis just happened to be lucky enough to be in a position to be playing that in different places and trying it out in DJ sets and figuring out that, shit, it's functional, it works. You know, you can play this in the club and people dance to it. And really that's what led to the foundation of the label, is that also there was this frustration where we were thinking about tracks by people like Kingdom, people like Egyptrixx at the time, because Girl Unit and Jam City weren't really in it at that point so much. In the really early days, we were more looking at people like Kingdom and Egyptrixx and thinking, how come these club tracks that are so effective, so functional, and sound so good, and we like them so much, how come they're not getting signed to other labels? Like me and Elle were having lunch one day, and I really remember like really clearly being like, hold on a minute, that Mystic by Kingdom, like that tune's old as hell. We were like, hold on a minute, why hasn't anyone done that with anything with that yet? And we were like, well, maybe that should be our first release. Obviously that didn't happen in the end, but it's interesting that something like that was around for so long before we even started the label, and it was definitely a catalyst to think about it just sitting there on the shelf and sitting there in our DJ crates, and how unfair that is for everyone else.
So if you're thinking about the kind of early days of the label, who are the people, I mean, obviously lots of people will know about all of this, but there will be some people who won't. So who are the kind of like early parts of the family, and what was it about their sound that kind of pulled you towards them?
I have to say that Girl Unit was, back when he was called Girl You Know It's True, was like completely foundation, and he was definitely with us from the start and just DJing with us from the start and everything like that. My first real interaction with him was when he submitted a mixtape for I used to run a blog and like a webzine. That's pretty retro to say that now, isn't it? Webzine. But I used to do that with, some of you might know Dan Hancock's, we used to do that together. He's a journalist in London. So anyway, Girl You Know It's True did a mixtape for that blog. And it was all Miami bass, booty kind of stuff, and it's not far removed from what he's doing now at all, actually, or what we're doing now. But yeah, I can't even remember what year that was, but that was a long time ago. That was before the words Night Slugs were put together.
And that was a kind of bassline inspiration, the Slugs part. The
name, the name is a bassline thing. Yeah, it's like a London bassline thing. Slugs means like womp. And the night is like everything else, the ephemera. That's when it happens at night. So, you know, it's like pretty literal name, really.
I mean, we're going to be playing lots of sort of newer stuff as well, but is there something you can play us from the kind of early part of the label?
The early days?
That might, just a kind of little snippet to give us a sense about where you're coming from.
Sure. I think this is still one of my favourite tracks for the club ever. So this is IRL by Girl Unit, which I'm sure many of you know. I still remember when I first heard this, and I just couldn't believe that my friend made this. Like, my friend made this. It was crazy. I was like, is this getting signed or what? Like, can I have this for the label, please? Do you know what I mean?
It's in the kind of beginning part of the label, there was a really distinctive sound. You had lots of different artists, but there seemed to be something that very much brought it all together.
People talk about, I think people plucked a few words from our early press releases that really stuck. I'm not going to reiterate those now because I'm trying to shake all that off at this point. But
it's the reductive nature of the internet, isn't it? It's become smaller and
it's
truer.
It's inevitable. But there was definitely, in my view, there was something that was connecting the releases that was actually a bit more intangible than that. That was more of a feeling, kind of an aesthetic approach to mixing and certain sound palette choices.
Okay, let's break that down a bit because that's interesting.
Totally.
Because then we can, that takes it away from the kind of reductiveness of what other people think.
Totally.
So what are those things that you say stylistically brought them together?
It's even hard for me to pin it down, but I mean, a part of it has to do with the fact that I mix a lot of the records, so I look after the cohesion of things to some extent. I don't do all of it, but I do. I've done a lot of the records over the years, the actual engineering part, but I'd like to think that I'm not moving away from what the artists want. I'm trying to just build on their vision. But I guess that the whole listening to sound system music that was innovative, that wasn't like. Nothing against reggae or anything like that, but that's not retro. That's like sound system music that's trying to do something totally different, but with the constraints of having these bass bins and these tops and trying to fit into that template of sounding good in the club. I think that's the mentality of like, how will this push? Like, how will this feel? And so to some extent it was that. To another extent, of course, it was like shared interests, like shared musical influences and all that kind of obvious stuff that would make people get on musically. So shared interest in grime, shared interest in ghetto-house and all these different other genres that were like important to us. And other than that, I think it's just trying to make people feel stuff in the club and not just like obviously you want to make them bang, but there's something else there too. And I think that like X factor is like that intangibleness is maybe what brings them together.
And are you aware or like not aware, but do you know what the feeling is that you want people to feel?
But it varies between tracks because some tracks want you to feel something and other tracks want you to feel something.
Give me some examples if you
can or want to. For example, with IRL, with Girl Unit's music, it's like. Again, there's a variety, and even in his music, it varies so much, and it's like one emotion in one track and one emotion in another track. But like with IRL, it's like when I heard it, I was just like, "This is horror! Like this is horror! Like, like when this is gonna be loud in the club, this is gonna be horrifying, but in a really cool way. But like, just that sense of panic from his synths and stuff, that and the whooshing kind of the higher frequencies, like just. Profoundly uneasy.
So I wonder what goes on like with your heart and your blood pressure.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like it's a physical. Like it should be a physical physical experience.
And you started the White Label imprint at the same time. Do you want to kind of? It seems now like a very clever thing to have done, to have had it at the same time.
Thank you.
Sort of reflecting the kind of output. What was the reason to start it really?
We just had bootlegs basically. We had tracks that we couldn't. We didn't feel comfortable putting out properly, so limited vinyl only releases seemed like a nice cheeky way to get around that. The first one was actually L-Vis's record that he already released digitally on San Pellegrino, so we were like, hey, fuck it, why not? And then so we just did a vinyl of it, small run, 500 copies or something. They sold right out, and then after that it started to be more about actual bootlegs, like creative ones. So ones where we take a cappella that we definitely weren't allowed to use, and just put it over a beat that we'd made or something like that, and just clever edits. Because the thing is, we make a lot of these for our own DJ sets. Kingdom does probably edit a day like that, and the rest of us like to do that kind of thing too. And it just makes our DJ set so much more special. So to some extent, it was the need to share some of that, and to also allow other DJs to be able to have access to some of that stuff.
But what's it done for the whole thing to have kind of both those aspects running in parallel?
it's just nice to have different outputs, you know, because we've got club constructions now as well. So it's almost like there's 3 strands to the label. And it's nice to be able to, like, now that we have white label, now that we have club constructions, it's nice to be able to let the EPs be more like monumental. Like every time there's going to be a new EP from now on, like in the main Night Slugs series, it should feel like the next big statement of where we're headed, and it's like a big artistic statement. We're really going on the art and, you know, trying to make it really dynamic. Whereas I guess with the other ones, it's like a chance for us to keep feeding DJs and feeding the club, hopefully, as long as people want to play it. Mm-hmm. You know, but it's really that. It's just getting. It's like when I started getting into DJing, it was all about going into a record shop and seeing what was on the wall, and then maybe asking what was behind the counter, and you know, it's like cheeky white label culture. And I really miss it. Like it's a really special thing that felt really special when you got something on white label that felt like it wasn't really like widely available or widely known, and you could play it in your DJ sets. It was just it's an amazing, awesome feeling. And to some extent, it's trying to preserve some of that culture that I feel like I come from as a DJ.
It's the kind of power of secrets, really, isn't it?
A little
AKA,
bit.
I'm really stubs.
Kind of, yeah. It's like not quite dub play culture, but something in the middle.
Uh-huh. See, we could now talk a bit more about the kind of how the label progressed into albums. Or you've kind of reached a point where you're sort of talking about like DJs and you as a DJ and the DJs that influenced you. I wonder if we should, which path should we take?
I don't know.
All right, well, let's come back to the thought about the DJ then, because I think that's kind of next in where we're going to come to. And maybe you can just tell us a bit about the label and how you sort of moved into this the sort of transitional phase of putting out albums.
Sure, okay. The first time we put out an album was because Egyptrixx made one for us. So it's almost like, but it's like a lot of things with the label. You know, to some extent, like, I'm trying to look after the whole thing. I'm trying to really, like, make it cohesive and make it feel good and make it feel like it's all happening at the same time and everything like that. But a lot of it wasn't actually planned. A lot of it just happened really serendipitously because someone happened to make the right piece of music. And so, sure enough, Egyptrixx just made an album, and there it was. And it was great. And it fit the sound of the label, the aesthetic of the label so much that we just couldn't not do it. Mm-hmm. And it's like I never actually set out to be like, okay, we've graduated, we need to start doing long playing projects. So it wasn't like that at all. It's just Egyptrixx happened to make us a really wonderful album. Mm-hmm. And that was our first album release. Then we also did All Stars Volume 1, which kind of ended up sounding like an album, but that wasn't the intention at the time. But it's a nice byproduct of that. The intention with that was just to like collate all our music and really put it together and make people listen to it kind of in a row and really drive the point home that it's like, yes, these tracks are cohesive.
And I guess also maybe giving in to people who aren't so kind of deep in it that
yeah,
they know your
totally.
stuff anyway.
Doing a compilation really helps with that in the sense that people that aren't following it on a daily, weekly basis of like what's hot, what just dropped or whatever. A lot of people got into stuff that way, and because tracks like What by Girl Unit were on it and things like that, it was a cool move for us because it just helped us expand. But that's not really an album. It's kind of different to what you're kind of talking about. Like, for example, obviously Jam City did an album with us called Classical Curves, which is really special and still really means a lot to me, and it seems to have connected with a few people. People seem to like it. But the way that came about was we actually asked him to do that because I would always listen to his demos, and he always had a shitload of music which never got released, and he recently leaked some of it, which is cool. We're really happy that happened because I feel like it deserves to be out there because a lot of it's really, really good. But he always had an absolute ton of music that I would just not be able to. He didn't really want to put out some of it, and it was actually, the volume was like too high for us to even put out, really. So, but I would always find myself listening to it like in a playlist together, one after the other, and I always found that his tracks sounded really good, surrounded by other tracks by him. Mm-hmm. So that's where we came from with that. We actually asked him, commissioned him to do an album for us, and then we almost had that done, and then it got completely scrapped, and he just suddenly got this vision and just wrote from scratch, and then Classical Curves happened. So
can we have a little listen to something and maybe tell us?
Yeah, for sure.
Tell us, maybe like play something that when you first heard, you realised that something completely different had happened.
Totally. Bear with me, sorry. Okay, here we go. Quite enough of that.
So, what did you think when you received this?
I mean, that wasn't what it sounded like when I received it, but it was in a batch of tracks that made me go, okay, this is his own project. Basically, this is like he's got his vision and he's definitely got it worked out.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we could carry on talking about sort of Night Slugs for ages longer. I think probably we should come back at some point to talk about some of the newer people that are kind of in the family. But I just wanted to sort of take it back to you for a minute. You've said before, you know, basically I'm a DJ, and it was DJs that influenced you like heavily in the first place.
Yeah, definitely.
We kind of can we bring things around to a certain gentleman by the name of Slimzee?
Totally. So Slimzee was the godfather of grime, or is the godfather of grime, whatever you want to say, but maybe a little bit less active now. He was most active around, I want to say like 2002, 2003 onwards, until he got his ASBO. I believe he's got the only, and ASBO is an antisocial behaviour order, which stops you from doing certain things in the UK. It's kind of like a loophole in the law that means that you don't get sent to prison, but you're on parole kind of, but it's like restricts your movement. I think he's got the only height-based ASBO where he can't travel to a certain height because that means that he can get to the pirate radio station.
He wasn't allowed over, was it like 4 floors or something?
He wasn't allowed to go 4 floors above ground level or something crazy like that.
Because he was such a dedicated, you know, he dedicated so much to the kind of pirate radio world.
He is pirate radio, you know. And I got into him through, I got into him through Dizzy Rascal, basically. I know that was the way into grime for, if people that are into grime, I think that a lot of people kind of, it made it click for them that when the Dizzy record came out, when the first Dizzy single started coming out, I Love You and all that kind of stuff. Before that, like I'd gone to school with surrounded by garage and everyone was listening to garage, which is okay for me, but it didn't really click until I started hearing these like really deformed kind of sounds and these really kind of, it's like techno being made by kids that didn't have a techno audience or didn't have any audience for that matter, really.
And sometimes quite literally being made on a PlayStation.
At times, although I think that's been played up a little bit. But definitely being made on cheap software, being made with cheap sounds, being made without any real like technical know-how. But that's actually what made it special, because they found their own way through it, and they didn't. In fact, I've been trying to recapture that naivety, I guess, and it's impossible, because it's like the way they did things, the not knowing was exactly what made these producers make this crazy, brilliant music, is that they didn't have anyone to answer to, they didn't have anyone to necessarily look up to, apart from maybe like garage producers they knew or something. But a lot of the time they were just acting autonomously. And their only real audience was the pirate radio DJ they would give their dubs to, or the people that were listening to the stations. But it's like no one cared, no one was like, you can't do this because that breaks the rules, because this isn't house, or this isn't how garage works, or there wasn't any of that at all. But I got into Slimzee because he was quite tightly related to the Roll Deep crew, which Dizzy Rascal was in at the time. And I just started listening to a ton of radio, and I used to listen to all sorts of bollocks before that, but basically it just wiped the slate clean for me. I was like, oh, okay, this is what I was meant to do in life. I was meant to play this music. So I would just spend all day long taping radio, listening to radio. We're really lucky in London that we had this pirate radio culture, because I know it's unique to the UK. A lot of countries have something similar, but the way that we had it was, our radio is really tightly controlled. It's pretty hard to get a license, and you can only really get a license if you're doing something fairly unique, or if you're serving a community that's fairly unique. So that's kind of how we came about with having a radio, like a pirate radio culture. But I'm sure you guys already know about that anyway.
Yeah, although as I've heard Norman J saying before, in most other countries in the world, pirate radio would not be tolerated. I mean, it's often kind of,
that's the thing.
Like people did it in the UK, and they sometimes had all their gear taken away from them or got in trouble with the police.
Totally.
But it was still kind of not exactly tolerated, but it happened. And there are plenty of other places where that just would never have happened.
We just got shut straight down.
Yeah, absolutely. It's totally not happening. So we've got a lot to be grateful for.
We are lucky with that, for sure.
But you've got like a kind of classic piece of Slimzee that I think we should share. Tell us what it is first.
DJ Slimzee.
So this is the intro to a tape called Sidewinder. Sidewinder was a rave brand at the time. They were doing kind of really big grime raves and garage raves, and they would do these tape packs. So this is DJ Slimzee on the turntables, and a really young Dizzy Rascal and a pretty young Wiley on the mic, both sounding pretty hungry and kind of at their peak.
Said you don't know nothing till you know that I love you. Baby, I know, I can reach you. I'll show you, I'll teach you, 'cause you don't know nothing till you know that I love you. Baby, if you just fall in love, then soon you'll be learning.
Hey yo, this is the intro. It's the Sidewinder thing right now. DJ Slimzee in the hot seat, MC Wiley, Dizzy Rascal in the house. Outside of the Roll Deep crew. Send out to all the page-go dogs, it's all good in the hood. Reaching out to the Manchester crew, outside with the Birmingham crew, outside with the Leeds crew. Send out to the Sheffield Massive, outside with the Northampton crew. This is the intro. Here we go, yo. And it's a Sidewinder thing right now. Bonus thing. Outside Principle, outside Jubilee. Outside the Juice Man, outside Champagne Bubbly.
Think you know where you say that for. Some girl banging that you go, what for? Pregnant, what you talking about? Be sure. 15, she's underage, that's raw. And against law, 5 years or more. And she wants a score and a half of a draw.
Yo, it's the Sidewinder.
So they would start off with just playing like the big vocal tracks at the time, and then kind of lead on to actually spitting. Do you want me to? Shall I forward a little bit into the tape, or?
No, well, we could listen to a tiny bit more, or you can tell us like where that kind of energy and feeling and impetus is in what you do. Like how do you, or I guess either where it is or where you would want it to be.
I mean, I've been trying. I don't want to confuse you guys. There was like a kind of a soul intro there and stuff like that. This, if you listen to this tape, it's it's about how long is it? Is it 45 minutes a side? Is that what tapes used to be? It's pretty intense, you know. So it's like the mixing is really fast. The BPM is around 138, 140 the whole time. Wiley and Rascal swap bars. It's like 16 bars, 8 bars, past the mic constantly. You know, play around each other's bars. Like the energy is unbelievable. And you can get this in the rave as well. It wasn't just a radio thing. This is possible in the club. And basically that possibility is something that I still feel has been untapped, because the way that this music went, the story with this music is it's kind of like it didn't go anywhere near as far as I felt like it should. It is still around. Grime's still around. Grime's a scene. There's raves. There's people like Butters are doing, you know, great stuff with new artists. But this old aesthetic, this original aesthetic of grime, of the way it sounded back in 2003 onwards, I do feel like it's been lost at ages. There's various reasons for that. You know, we had police crackdowns, we had a ton of prejudice, we had media hype that went up as far, you know, went down as fast as it went up. You know, all these different reasons. But to me, I just like my whole career was always based around a frustration of how come this isn't more celebrated. Let's try and capture this vibe, you know. I'm not trying to make retro grime. That's definitely not what I'm trying to do out here. But it's capturing that energy, capturing that possibility that a club can be so intense, and the dance music and rave music could be at that level of intensity.
Can you play something that's of yours
where I've tried to do it?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, you guys probably know my track Silo Pass, but I'll play it anyway.
I think that's the one for now.
So many edits now. I actually sampled Dizzy Rascal for the first first 16 of this or whatever. This is his little intro from a track. He was a great producer. That's another thing people don't really know. Like, you guys should go home and check out Dizzy Rascal's beats if you don't know them, because yeah, he was great. Thanks. That's enough.
Yeah, so that's grime as kind of rude club music.
Yeah, I mean, I think
not that it isn't in other environments, but that's you making it specifically.
That is me specifically making grime. Yeah.
And do you want to kind of break down a little bit about what went into that track for us?
Yeah, I went out of my way to figure out exactly how all my favorite tracks were made from that era. It was kind of
hard.
hard.
Did you draw diagrams?
Huh?
Did you draw diagrams?
I didn't draw diagrams. It's more to do with like process and sound kits and stuff like that. And this actually applies to my production as a whole. What I've been trying to do is, I've been trying to take really technical influences from my influences. So like what I'll do is, when I like a track, I'm gonna figure out how it was done, like what equipment was used, what sound kits were used, what drum machines were used, and then and you know, and I'll recreate it as like privately as an exercise in just learning how to produce. So like for this whole EP, for the Southside EP, which is where that track came from, I went back and figured out a lot of these like cheap but no longer available sound kits that were being used at the time in like 2003 for by these London producers. And
like what?
Like what? Okay, so one of them was called Plug Sounds, and I don't mind telling you guys about this because good luck finding it. Like if you can find it, then props to you, honestly, because it was hard to get it to work. It's like this free French sound plugin with just like sound banks, modules and whatnot. The other thing is it's a Korg Triton rack that's like really important for this whole era, and those are really readily available, and also like totally rinsed by like the Neptunes, like that's their whole, that and the I think Phantom is it? That's their whole like sound. So good bit of gear, check that one out. And also the Wiley bass that kind of comes from that module as well, and so anyway, you know, I spent a little bit of time kind of researching how these things were made, what effects were used, and stuff like that, and then tried to make it my own. I don't know to what extent you guys can be the judge to what extent I succeeded, but the point is, it's trying to pay homage in a really kind of fairly direct way where, you know, I actually figure out the processes involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it sounds truly wicked.
Thanks.
What kind of can you tell us what kind of response you got from the sort of grime world on that tune? Yeah,
with that tune, I'm pretty happy with myself, actually, because I feel like a lot of people in grime really embraced it. I mean, DJ Spyro, who's like one of the, like, he's like a reigning king as a grime DJ, you know, he's like still probably the best grime DJ around, bootlegged it, or asked to remix it. A bunch of other people bootlegged it, Spooky bootlegged it, Spyro then bootlegged himself. So it's like, that's always a good sign, because that's another thing that was like super like appealing to me about that kind of culture is at the time, because it was a lot of Fruity Loops production, and Fruity just lets you just like loop stuff up real quick. Whoa. Cool.
Yeah.
Anyone got a field mic?
I feel like, you know, this is just a signal to, you know, it's just like this is a raw track.
The rave siren. Track's too hot.
Yeah, you just got it burning up then.
So yeah, Slimzee, sorry, not Slimzee. Spyro did that remix and has been playing it. Although interestingly, Spyro will only play. He was only interested in the first like 16 of the drop. Like as soon as the ARP comes in, he's like, no, I'm out. So I guess some of the otherness of it was still not that much embraced. But the point is, people played it. People in the grime scene played it. People consider it a grime track. And I got a lot of feedback from OG producers saying, this sounds really authentic. This sounds really from like, it's like from, you know, it sounds from that classic era, which I think everyone misses. I'm not the only one that feels like that. It's like, it feels like everyone that was into that music slightly kind of teary-eyed about it because it just disappeared.
Well, I guess it didn't disappear because it just mutated into other things, but there weren't enough of those records. There's a kind of a canon.
There's a canon, and it's like the opportunities, like the potential is like hinted at. It's just been, the surface has just been scratched. That's the thing. I'm not ready to leave it behind for that reason, because I feel like there's so much potential there, and there's just like, you can make that music for years and you can still come out with amazing original stuff.
Can we talk a bit more about some of your other productions? Because actually, sure. Even though it was kind of, you know, your co-label. Yeah. That's not quite the right sentence, but you know what I mean.
I do know.
It took you a little while to actually put your music out.
Yeah.
I mean, not that you weren't making stuff, because I know that you were making stuff, but like, how come it took a little while?
I'm pretty time-starved because I do a lot of stuff with this label, and like, I'm just gonna say, if anyone wants to start a label, you better clear out your next like year and a half at least. Clear your schedules, basically. So it's like that. Like it just ate my life. Like especially because I'm kind of involved in a lot of aspects to it, from the art direction through to the audio direction and mixing and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, yeah, it's just time. And then between that and doing shows, doing DJ shows and stuff, it just means that I'm really limited for studio time. And I always really envy producers that can just sit down and just like bang out a track from start to finish in half an hour. I might be able to do the core idea in half an hour, and I definitely try not to string it out, because I feel like if it's not happening, move on to the next thing. That's always my approach. But I can't finish stuff. Like I need to really get into a zone where I'm like, I've got like 3 weeks of nothing else but studio, at least, and then I can write a record. But I haven't had that for years, so that's the reason that I'm a little bit like slow.
So can we hear something else of yours?
Yeah. What should I play?
Well, you were talking about the Tom Trago stuff.
Oh,
well, you weren't here, but
you know what? I'll play that after.
Okay.
But I want to play for you guys this track MJT, which I mentioned at the start, because this track kind of like became the template to what I'm doing now. This came out on Night Slugs white label series. Oops. Okay. Thanks. So the thing with that track is the sample, the little key and the one little bass note is from a Mary Jane Girls track that was produced by Rick James. And you know, it's like a really sweet kind of boogie love song, and it's like the idea of taking that little snippet and making it like, originally this track was called, I shortened it down because I felt it was a bit uncool to say it, but it's like, it was called Mary Jane Torture, because it's like, it's meant to be like, the repetition is meant to be like unpleasant to the max. Like it's not meant to be, it's meant to take something that used to be about love and, you know, really human, like human feelings, and then make it feel really unhuman. And that's kind of become the template for what I'm trying to do with my next record, my next EP.
Mm. Is there anything else you can tell us about the next EP?
No. Not for now. Mainly because of what I was saying earlier on, because of how kind of I'm pretty time starved. And I just want to let it be, I just want to let the music speak, so.
Well, I mean, fairly soon we're going to kind of put it out to questions for you lot. Cool. But I want to talk a little bit more about some of your production and some of the kind of newer stuff, the newer faces that have become part of Night Slugs. So let's stick with you for the minute. What else have you got going on kind of producer-wise?
So I've got kind of a collaboration with a guy called Tom Trago from Amsterdam, which started off as a one-off, but I think we're going to keep it going because we've done it like 2 years in a row now. We take a few weeks in August and just get together in his studio. He's got a really amazing studio in Amsterdam. Not amazing for like the equipment, although he has got cool stuff in there, but just like the vibe is beautiful, and we always make cool shit in there. So originally, Techie Latex from San Pellegrino asked us to collaborate, and that was his kind of idea. But since then, you know, me and Tom have gone off on one, and we've kind of like, I think we've got at least 3 12s probably coming later this year. They just need to be edited and mixed and all the other stuff that needs to happen. But yeah, it's a different project. What we do together is much more like analog jam kind of vibes. Like we'll get in a room, we'll get a few machines going, and just see what happens. Record long takes, and then try and edit something together out of that. But it's the main, like the core ideas of the tracks definitely happen within like half an hour or something like that, just while we're together, and we try and keep as much of the live takes as possible.
Mm-hmm. And what is it about him or that scenario that makes it a good collaboration for you?
Because we do come from really different places. He hasn't got my roots, and he's very much like he's really into disco. I mean, I love disco too, but it's just to do with what your true passions are, what you're like, you know, what actually feeds directly into your music. He makes a lot of house, so when we come together, the things that we've got in common tend to be like Chicago music, house, some disco stuff, some boogie stuff, synthy kind of stuff, and I guess there's less of an emphasis on I don't know, it's kind of hard to put into words. There's less of an emphasis on making it like super cutting edge club kind of stuff, and more of just trying to create a nice vibe that maybe references the things that we both like. Mm-hmm.
It's funny because again, I've seen you before mentioning Dance Mania.
Yeah, totally.
Lil Lewis and that kind of like mid to late 80s Chicago vibe.
And 90s too.
And later stuff as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So what is it about that sound that kind of appeals to you?
It's hard to say what it is in words, but it's like, I mean, I love house music, but I think people have different ideas of what that is. But to me, it's like, that is what I love about house music, is that Chicago sound. But it's much the same as what appeals to me about grime, really,
yeah,
because
there's a rawness that kind of connects.
There's a rawness, there's a level of intensity there that you can't, that other music doesn't reach, and a level of like honesty that it sounds, you can kind of hear how it was made and who it was made by in a way, even though it's electronic music. Mm-hmm. And again, it's got that whole potential for like a emotiveness, and like, I don't know, there's just so much power in it. And that's another time, I think, when clubs were like being really, really challenged by productions, and you know, ravers and dancers.
What do you mean by like clubs being challenged by productions?
Like, not thinking, okay, I'm going to make a club track, and thinking that that's a reductive process. Actually thinking that that's like the biggest challenge ever. Like, how do I make people dance and feel good or feel like physically engaged, while also making them feel something else?
Or that thing about making people like stuff that they don't yet understand.
Yeah, making people physically react with their bodies by dancing to things that their brains aren't up to speed with yet.
I guess that's partly to do with like a challenge for the dance floor, but it's also often like a challenge between producers, isn't it?
Definitely.
Of like, how can I step up to
how
this
can I
next
flip
level?
This next, yeah, definitely.
And I guess that's something that you've seen that will always be present in those kind of nightclub worlds that have ended up creating amazing music. That's
why I'm so into the idea of community, as I love the idea that we're a community of producers, and we've got this dialogue going between us. And that's definitely true for the Night Slugs label, because like that track Her that I played by Jam City from his album, that's definitely influenced the Club Construction series. And we just have these memes that go back and forward, and hopefully, you know, everyone in the camp feels mutual about this. But it's kind of, we'd like to think that the ideas are there on the table, and it's kind of a, you know, push-pull and a call and response kind of situation.
So can you tell us about some of the people that more recently joined the camp?
Yeah. So one of our new kind of recruits is a guy called Helix, who is a US producer. He's from Georgia. And yeah, he's cool as well, but it's like he had to be in Night Slugs because he really gets that. He gets exactly the right crossover. Like, he loves grime, he loves rap, he loves techno, and he loves house, and he loves disco, and all the right things.
Did he know that he had to be on Night Slugs?
No, he didn't. Phil Girl Unit actually kind of A&R'd that one. He showed me a track called Drum Track, and we ended up signing it and putting it out. So that was Girl Unit. That goes out to you, that one. But yeah, I mean, he definitely, he belongs, and I think he feels that way too, hopefully. But his next release with us is a Club Constructions volume, which I think has been. I'm really interested in what's going on with Club Constructions, because me and L-Vis gave everyone a set of parameters, which all started with L-Vis's first Club Constructions record, which are like, some of the things are like, the reverbs have to be super short and tight.
Oh, so you've actually got like a list of like dogma type rules.
There's like a manifesto of sorts. But and the whole point of Club Constructions is, while the rest of the label is trying to get into maybe slightly loftier territories where we're really trying to be a little bit more out there, I guess, with some of the stuff we're doing. We definitely want to keep one foot in constantly producing new, really functionalist club music that doesn't necessarily have much content. It's like, it's drums, it's like club tools, it's DJ tools, it's, functionalist.
So what are the rules then?
So as I say, one of them is no long reverbs. One of them is no unnecessary vocals, and obviously Bringing the Cats. I don't know how many people know about Bringing the Cats, but that came out as a Club Constructions record, and that's a vocal record. But I would argue the vocals are absolutely essential for that one to work. So it's these things, like no unnecessary vocal samples, no unnecessary long reverbs or effects, and all these rules have been broken somewhere already in the Club Constructions catalog. But it's just it has to feel a certain way. Like, we encourage tape saturation for that project. It's just, there's a few different things. I can't actually remember all of them.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to mention, really, but in George Orwell's 5 Rules of Writing, the last rule is break all these rules rather than say anything outright barbarous.
Cool.
George Orwell
we definitely encourage that, for sure. I mean, like, as I say, the rules have been broken over the time, but it's like, they've got to be broken in the right way, and it's I'd like to think that, I'm really interested in the fact that because we created these parameters, or not because of that, but maybe that aided the process a little bit, but what's happened with Club Constructions a little bit now is that the producers have gone away, and they've kind of got their own, like, the series has its own sound, and you guys will see from some of the stuff that ends up coming out, like, the stuff that the next 3 releases that are lined up, they all sound really similar in the best possible way. They're all done by 3 different people, and I just find that fascinating that they can communicate with music. Like, none of them wrote to each other and were like, "So what are you doing for your CC release? Like, what are you gonna do it like this, or are you gonna do it like that?" Like, none of them did that. It just is musical ideas. They hear me play the demos on Rinse FM, and they go away and they make something else. And it's a beautiful thing,
So can you play us something from the kind of like that illustrates a more recent release that illustrates something about where you're collectively at the moment?
I guess Club Construction would be a good place to do that. I'll play something from the next Helix. Okay. This is a particularly brutalist piece, but hopefully you will see the influence, because I really feel like this one was influenced by the Jam City track that I played. almost no point playing this in its entirety because it is that is it. But I want to play another one because just to illustrate the point I'm making. This is by a different producer. I'm not going to say who yet, but this is another forthcoming Club Constructions thing. It's not the same, but it's like the relationships are there, I think.
Shall we head back into off the record territory again for one track before we put it out to questions?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
do that.
You got that.
So this is something that I've... we didn't talk about Fade to Mind.
Oh,
It'd be good
okay.
to introduce them a little bit first.
Okay.
So a recent development with
this
Night Slugs.
Because the thing is, it's a live edit, so we have to make sure that we're clear about which bits we keep in and which bits we don't. So we're keeping this in.
Yeah, we should keep this in. There's a recent development with Night Slugs, which is cool, and again, kind of like points to the organic way in which we work and the way that everything's developing. So Kingdom, who was an artist that released on Night Slugs several times and has been part of our family. Like I said earlier on, he was one of the ones whose productions really made us start a label in the first place. He recently started his own label, and that's called Fade to Mind. And we're calling it sister labels because they've kind of taken a lot of cues from our template and done their own thing with it. They filled up that template with their own content, you know. But there's similar parameters there. There's a lot of, I mean, we're all friends. Like there's people like Nguzu, Prince William, DJ Vizsla. Mike Q is involved, but you know, there's a lot of people that we're already kind of sharing music with and sharing ideas with and stuff like that. But more than that, I think it's like structurally the way that it's been set up and the way that Kingdom is kind of like looking after everyone's mixes and trying to keep a cohesive element there, and the way that their art has a relationship with all the rest of their art.
Because there's an artwork link, a relationship, isn't there?
Yeah, there's an artwork relationship, even literally in the template. Like they use the same cover template as we do for their EPs, and we definitely want to make that link explicit. So it's interesting, but they've definitely, you know, it's a way in which people are influencing each other. I find it really interesting because to a large extent it's hands off. Like it's not me and L-Vis sitting there telling people this is going to be your next move or anything like that. And they've gone off on their own and done that, and that's very much their project, it's their baby. But which leads us on to what you were about to ask. So if we can once again go off the record.
We're off.
Sorry to be awkward, but it's just stuff. When stuff isn't finished, I don't want it out there yet. So Fade to Mind have a new artist, Kalela, and she's a singer, and she's about to do a mixtape with them. It's 15 tracks, and it's like so many producers from Night Slugs, so many producers from Fade to Mind have productions on there. And it's kind of an interesting thing for us because it's a first. It's really the first time we're all interested in producing for you know, vocal projects, but it's really the first time that any of us have been able to do that with someone, and to a level where we feel really kind of satisfied by it. So I wanted to play you guys my beat for that project, and how that came out.
Thanks, guys.
Wow, that's a wow. So, questions. Who's got the microphone? Who has some questions?
Hey. I was wondering if you could tell us about how it's different to produce for vocalists and how was your process different like when you're producing?
I'm really new to it, actually. So I'm still kind of figuring that out. But with the track I just played, I feel like, I mean, I had to take cues from the lyrical content. I had to take cues from what was already there. It was the process with that was kind of interesting because I came into that when there was already a demo there, which had a completely different production, but the vocal was similar, and like the vocal melody was similar. So I wrote around it, and I felt like there was a certain like vulnerability and softness that I needed to preserve. So that's not something that I would necessarily, like, I worked really differently on that one to the way, especially with the way I treated the drums and everything like that. I really wanted to work totally differently on that track to the way I would work for club music, because it's one of the first times I've done a track that was explicitly not really a club track. But Kalel and I are planning to work more in future on stuff which will be more for my project, which will be clubby. And I definitely want to find, I kind of negotiate a way to make club music that isn't gonna, that doesn't have to, club vocal music that doesn't necessarily have to compromise or change the way that it works compared to what I normally do. But yeah, for that particular track, I definitely wanted to keep things really held back and really gentle. But at the same time, I wanted to give it an edge. So like, there is this weight to it. Like there's this sub bass, which we wouldn't get in a ballad normally, and because I always want to subvert things a little bit. So, so yeah.
Thanks.
Hey man, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Also, thanks for repping the South. There's a lot of good dance music in the South, and I don't think it gets repped a lot. Thank you. But my question to you is, I think we didn't touch on it enough, but the artwork, I think, plays a very important role in with your label's direction, at least on coming from my perspective. And everything is like almost seems very airtight, and the branding is on point. So how much time do you spend on that? What was your vision on that? Who did you get to work? Can you explain all that? Because I think that's one of the strongest parts next to the music.
Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah. I spent a ton of time on it. I'm trying to spend less time on it because really I want to be in the studio. But it's another one of those things which initially started off with not having much of a plan, or like, we didn't really have a map of how it was going to develop or anything like that. I just made the Mosca cover, and I had certain ideas at the time. I was watching Panasonic Glider video, which I don't know if people are familiar with that, but it's like a piece of early electronic art which was generated electronically. It looks kind of naive these days, but it's like groundbreaking, and it's a little bit like the Tron aesthetic. It's a little bit like that wireframe kind of, slightly 80s looking, but really to me it looks like modernism. So that's why I'm drawn to it. But those are the influences for the early art. It's kind of like, I guess what I was really trying to do was illustrate the music in a really literal way, in the sense that, like in a synesthetic way. So if you guys are familiar with synesthesia, it's like the effect of one sense. Is it one sense making you get another sense? So it's like taste making you feel like you're being touched, or so it's like when you hear music, what do you see? It was literally an exercise in that. So for the first year or so of Night Slugs, it was like I was just doing these like really simple, what I saw as modernist, hopefully, illustrations that would go some way to giving the music a little visual home to live in. I guess that hasn't really changed. That remit hasn't really changed. But the main thing that has changed is that the production's just gone like way higher. The standards of what the visuals actually look like. And the biggest catalyst for that was Jam City's album project, which has a really interesting story behind it, which is kind of long, so I probably won't get into it. But basically, we were forced to do a 3D render for that project. Not many people realize that's what it is. It's not a photo. It's 3D. And since then, we've been doing these really intricate 3D pieces, which take forever. And the way that that's done is me and the artist will put together like a wireframe, or like it's kind of just like a layout. We'll say how it'll be laid out. We'll say what textures are going to be applied. So we fully art direct the whole piece, and then we hand it over to a 3D person who will then create it for us. So it's pretty cool, and it's getting more hands off, which I'm happy about. I want other people to be able to contribute to it, and I don't want it to be just me anymore. So yeah, it's developing. It's cool.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Any more? Oh, you're all so blissed out by that last piece of music that all the questions have left your mind. If so, feel free to kind of come and talk in person.
I'm around. I'll be around all day today, so see you guys around.
Definitely. So I think big round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks very much.